Most finance books I've read have taught me something. Very few of them made me actually love finance. And that's what I want to talk about today. This is not a list of 5 books you absolutely have to read to master investing. It's not a finance syllabus. And some of these books probably won't teach you a single formula. But they did something much more important for me. They changed the way how I look at markets, money, risk, and probably, and most importantly, people. And I think that's why they're worth talking about. Because whether you're just getting interested in finance or you already invest, these books can give you a completely different perspective on how markets actually work beyond the numbers. These are the books that gave me that spark, the books that made me interested in investing and money management in the first place, and then stayed with me as I became a financial professional. For a bit of a context, I now work in investment management. I am a chief investment officer of a family office and the founder of Moss Portfolio. And before that, I spent years in equity research. Just one thing before we do, I don't actually have all of these books with me. After moving countries, my books ended up scattered between different places. So I'll show you the ones who I have here, and the ones that I don't, I just put it on the screen. Michael Hughes. Honestly, I could almost stop here and say, read Michael Hughes, all of him. Because he does something that is surprisingly difficult to do. He takes subjects that sound plainly boring, like bonds, mortgage-backed securities, trading infrastructure, Wall Street firms, and writes about them almost like thrillers. And I think that was incredibly important for me, because when you first approach finance, you tend to think finance is about numbers. You have prices, balance sheets, interest rates, models, spreadsheets. But then you read Michael Lewis and realize, oh, that's actually about people. And people are completely insane. Take Liar's Poker. On the surface, it's a book about Salmon Brothers and the bond market. But what you really get is this completely crazy world of Wall Street. Ego, status, bonuses, competition, incentives, people trying to prove they're smarter than everyone else. And once you see finance through that lens, it becomes very difficult to unsee it. Because markets might look like numbers on a Bloomberg screen, but behind every one of those numbers, there are humans making decisions. And humans have careers to protect, they have bonuses, they have reputations, they get greedy, they get scared, and they copy each other. And sometimes they do spectacularly stupid things. And then you have Big Short, and obviously most people probably know the movie. But the book is also great, and the thing I like about the book is it's not simply that a handful of investors realized that mortgage market was going to collapse and made a lot of money. That's the nice retrospective version of the story. The much more interesting part is what happened before they were proven right. Because imagine looking at something and being convinced that entire market has got it wrong. And then nothing happens. And everyone else continues making money. And you look stupid. And then another month passes and you still look stupid. Being contrarian sounds incredibly cool afterwards. Being contrarian while you are losing money and everyone around you thinks you are an idiot is a completely different experience. And I think that's one of the most important things the book shows. Being right is not enough. You also somehow have to survive the period during which the market thinks you are wrong. Then there are 2 Michael Lewis books that I think are a little less popular than Liar's Poker and The Big Short, but they are absolutely worth reading as well. Flash Boys and Boomerang. Flash Boys is maybe the best example of Michael Hughes taking something that should be almost impossible to make entertaining. Market structure, milliseconds, data cables, order execution. I mean, come on! And yet you read it like a detective story. What stayed with me the most, though, was a very personal conclusion. Day trading suddenly started to look like a pretty bad game for an individual investor. Once you understand how sophisticated the infrastructure behind short-term trading actually is, you see the scale of the disadvantage much more clearly. These high-frequency trading firms spend enormous amounts of money just to be a fraction of a second faster. They place servers physically closer to exchanges. They optimize how orders travel through the system. And then there is me, sitting at home, looking at the chart and thinking I'm somehow going to consistently outtrade them. Probably not. Now, Flash Boys is not a book arguing that day trading is useless, it's not Michael Lewis's point, but for me it was one of the strongest arguments against trying to compete in a very short-term trading as an individual investor. It made me appreciate that the market structure matters enormously and that sometimes the smartest decision is simply not to play a game where the other side has a massive technological advantage. And Boomerang is probably even less talked about, which is a shame because it's incredibly entertaining. Lewis takes essentially the same question, why do financial systems go spectacularly wrong, and moves it from the Wall Street to entire countries. He travels through places like Iceland, Greece, Ireland, and Germany after the financial crisis and looks at how each country ended up on its own very particular financial mess. And what makes the book so entertaining is that he doesn't explain those crises only through debt levels or bank balance sheets. He looks at culture, incentives, and national behavior. Different countries had access to cheap money, but they did very different things with it. And I think that's what makes Boomerang fit so perfectly with the rest of his work. Again, the numbers matter, but the really interesting story is what people do when you give them money, incentives, and opportunity to behave badly. So I think Michael Lewis's books were my first big lesson that finance is never just finance. It's psychology, it's incentives, it's culture, it's ego, and sometimes it's basically a very expensive form of human comedy. But once you start thinking about finance in terms of human behavior, another question appears. What about your own behavior with money? And that brings me to Morgan Housel. Morgan Housel, The Psychology of Money. He probably doesn't need much of an introduction. Even if you haven't read his books, there's a good chance you've seen him somewhere, especially after his very popular appearance on The Diary of a CEO. His most famous book, The Psychology of Money, and it is a completely different kind of finance book than what Michael Lewis writes. There is no dramatic trading floors, nobody is shorting the housing market, nobody is laying a fiber optic cable across America. It's much quieter than that, but in some ways, it's much more uncomfortable because now the irrational person in the story might be you. What I really like about this book is that it's not really trying to teach you finance in the traditional sense. It's about the fact that being good with money and being smart about finances is not necessarily the same thing. You can understand markets, diversification, and compounding perfectly well, and still panic when the market falls, take risks you don't need to take, or constantly move the definition of what enough means. Because money decisions are incredibly personal. They are shaped by your experience, your expectations, your fears, the people around you. And I think this is why the book became so popular. Almost everyone can recognize themselves somewhere in it. But I actually like his newer book as well, The Art of Spending Money. And I think it tackles a question that personal finance books strangely don't talk enough. There are thousands of books telling you how to make money, save it, and invest it. But what happens once you actually have it? How do you spend money in a way that genuinely makes your life better? That's what this book is about. Housel looks at things like status, envy, expectations, and why we sometimes spend money on things that we think will make us happier, but don't. And on the other side, why people can become so focused on savings and accumulating wealth that they forget there was supposed to be a purpose to the money in the first place. Because ultimately, having the biggest possible number in your investment account is not the goal. The goal is for money to actually do something for your life. So if the psychology of money is about understanding how we behave while building wealth, the art of spending money asks obvious next question. What is all that wealth actually for? And another thing I really like about Housel is that he rarely tells you exactly what to do. There is no rigid rules, there is no follow these 5 steps and you will be rich, no direct recommendations. He gives you stories, observations, ideas, and then leaves quite a lot of space for you to form your own conclusions. And I really like that because money is so personal that the same idea can lead two people to completely different decisions. But when we move from thinking about money more broadly to the actual process of making investment decisions, there is one book that had a much bigger influence on me personally. This is Howard Marks. The most important thing, Illuminated. If you don't know him, Marx is a co-founder and co-chairman of Oak Tree Capital, and he has spent decades investing in areas like high yield and distressed bonds. So when he writes about risks, cycles, and investment decisions, this is coming from someone who has actually lived through many different market environments. The book I have here is, once again, The Most Important Thing, Illuminated, and I love these books because it feels much closer to how investing actually works in real life. There is rarely a giant green screen saying, buy this is cheap, this will definitely go up. Instead, you have incomplete information, uncertain outcomes, and a price. And you have to make a decision. Marx talks about what he calls second-level thinking. And I think this is one of the ideas that really shaped the way I think professionally. Because saying this is a great company is not enough. A great company can still be a terrible investment if the price already assumes everything will go perfectly. That's one of the ideas I took most strongly from Marx. Investing is not just about understanding the asset, it's about understanding what expectations are already built into the price. And once you start thinking this way, investing becomes much less about finding good or bad companies and much more about judging expectations, probabilities, and risk. Which brings me quite naturally to Nassim Taleb. Nassim Taleb, the Black Swan. Taleb is Taleb. You'll probably argue with him at least once while reading the book, possibly every 5 pages. But the central idea of the Black Swan is incredibly important. We are very good at explaining things after they happen. A crisis happens, a company collapses, a market crashes, and suddenly everybody has a beautifully constructed explanation for why it was inevitable. Of course this happened. Look at A, look at B, look at C. It was obvious. Except, if it was that obvious, why did almost nobody predict it beforehand? And this matters enormously in finance, because we use past to build models of the future. Usually that works reasonably well, but occasionally something happens that sits completely outside what we considered normal. And that one event can matter more than years of normal observations. So the question slowly changes. Instead of only asking, what do I think will happen? You start asking, what happens to me is something I never expected happens. And this actually brings me very naturally again to Benoit Mandelbrot, who had a huge influence on Taleb's thinking. Taleb called him his mentor, and after Mandelbrot's death, even described him as the only teacher he ever had. Benoit Mandelbrot. Mandelbrot was a mathematician, probably best known as a father of fractal geometry. But what makes him interesting for us is that he also spent decades applying those ideas to financial market. His book, I actually have this only in Russian, it's called The Misbehavior of Markets, written with Richard Hudson as well, takes some of these ideas we just discussed about Taleb and goes much deeper into mathematics behind them. And the basic problem is this: a lot of traditional finance assumes that markets are reasonably well behaved. Returns follow distributions, volatility can be measured. Extreme events are supposed to be extremely rare. Mandelbrot looked at actual markets and essentially said, Wait a minute, they are much wilder than that. Large price movements happen far more often than traditional models would suggest. Volatility comes in clusters. Calm periods can suddenly turn into complete chaos. And this is probably the nerdiest book on my list, but I absolutely love it. Because after reading it, you become much more suspicious whenever someone presents risk as beautifully precise number. The number might be useful, the model might be useful, but the model is still not reality. And I think that's why these books stayed with me. None of them is really a textbook. If you want to actually study accounting, valuation, or portfolio construction, there are better books for that. But what these books do instead is makes finance feel alive. They show you the people behind markets, the incentives behind decisions, and just how uncertain and occasionally absurd the whole industry can be. So this is definitely not my definitive finance reading list. These are simply the finance books I genuinely love, the ones I enjoyed reading, kept thinking about afterwards, and would happily read again. And honestly, I think that's a pretty good reason to recommend a book. So if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel. And tell me in the comments, what finance books had the biggest impact on the way you think about money and investing? I'm always looking for something new to read. And if you're at the point when you want to look at your capital in a more structured and professional way, from strategy to portfolio structure and risk, you can find more information about my company, Mass Portfolio, in the description below. Thank you for watching, and remember, money is not a one-time thing. It's a habit. Bye.